And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Mariel Forde Clarke. Mariel had a near-death experience where she was held in a sacred place of pure God consciousness, and now we're going to learn about it. Mariel, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Jeff, thank you for having me, and greetings from the western coast of Ireland.
Well,
it's a blessing to be here.
And what is so cool is that you are my first Irish guest, so that is awesome.
Oh, am I blessed?
Mm-hmm.
Let me make it worthwhile then, and rememberable.
I'm sure it will be. So my audience loves to hear about near-death experiences, and if you don't mind, can we start on the day that yours happened?
Absolutely. For me, I had been diagnosed with cervical cancer, and my surgery was scheduled. And like every other surgery, you sign your forms, and I ended up down in theatre. And apparently, at that time, I had a very, I had a very dysfunctional relationship. So being told I had cancer didn't really knock a stir out of me. I felt this is great. This is going to be a release for me. I don't have to pretend or live a lie anymore, because in Ireland at that time, it was very hard. We didn't have divorce. We just had about separation. So the old thinking was you made your bed and you lay on it. So that made separation even more difficult for anybody. You know, you just, what went on behind closed doors was of no concern. Didn't matter mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. You just got on with your life. So when I had been diagnosed with cervical cancer, and very extensive, I believe, it didn't bother me. I just wanted a release from it all. So going down to theatre, and I remember, you know, sending my angels and guides before me to clear the pathway, and to just, you know, using the violet flame as well, just to cleanse and clear the space so that everything would be fine for me. But during the surgery, I started to bleed outward. And no matter how much blood infusions I was given, it still came out. So I was pronounced dead. But I remember rising up out of my body, and I remember looking at myself on the bed, and I remember just going hugely into this. It was like a whirlpool of pure love and light. There was just calm, there was peace, there was serenity. I had no pain, I had no anxiety, I had no worries. Everything was just bliss, everything was peaceful. And I remember just hearing this beautiful music, soulful music, I understand it now. And it was so precious, and it had a calming effect on me. It was like soothing me. I was like a baby being rocked in divine arms. And it was absolutely, I will never forget it, because the essence of it and the energy of it still remains in me and with me. And it has even grown since 1992. But when and I remember very, very clearly, it was like everything was beautiful. Everything was like in a kaleidoscope of color. It was magic. It was just heaven, I suppose, for the want of a better word, a heaven. And it was the beauty of this peace that held me so sacred. And I knew I was being minded. I knew I was being nurtured. And I knew I was being infused with, for me now, it was God's love and God's light. And it was, I'm not quite sure how long I was suspended and pronounced dead. But when I was eventually, I don't recall coming back into my body. I just remember them saying, "We have her back. She's back. She's back." Right? And it was a few days later that the surgeon came and told me that I was a very, very lucky girl, because he said, you were gone. You were totally dead on us. And he said, but somebody in a higher power must have been minding you. So my quest then into this near-death experience, why did I live? Why did I live and others don't? But there is huge commonalities. I didn't go through the tunnel. I was just like catapulted out of my body, and I was hovering over my body. And then it was like I was sucked into this vacuum. And like I keep seeing it as like a whirlpool of all color and being sucked and drawn into the center of that. It was nearly like a nucleus of a cell. I was brought into the God center, the epicenter of divine love. And it felt so just incredible. But that remained with me. And it was so profound for me. And then I realized, near-death experiencers like myself, it is like, while there are so many commonalities, like seeing yourself floating above your body, watching the medics perform on you, trying to get you back, trying to resusc, being drawn into a tunnel. I didn't go through the tunnel. I was catapulted into this, as I call it, a whirlpool. And, I was very at home there. And when I was very disappointed when I opened my eyes and realized I was still alive, because I didn't want to be back here on Mother Earth. And one of the things, Jeff, that I did see while I was in this whirlpool and hearing this beautiful music, a hand presented itself through the ethers in this vortex that I was in. And it was that hand. It was like, stop sign, stop. I didn't have a life review then, because many that go through many near-death experiencers, they have a life review. The whole life flashes before their eyes. They're shown the errors of their ways, why they need to come back, the choice, maybe if they want to go back and correct the wrongs of their past, or, maybe it's time, that you need to stay here. But for me, the hand said it all. The hand came out. It was a hand that stopped me from going any further. And obviously that's when I re-entered my body. That hand stopped me. So my journey into near-death experiences and afterlife phenomena was very much pushed forward then, because I have a science background. I qualified in science as a serologist many, many years ago. So I would have a very skeptical outlook on, things that I can't see, things that can't be measured. Analysis was always my fact finders, data. So here I am faced with something, a phenomena that I'm not really able to explain, that I was on the other side. A hand did come out. I felt a God presence. There was a God consciousness. And here I am, trying to analyze my experience with a kind of a scientific mind. And it doesn't work that way. It definitely didn't work that way for me. So my quest then from my near-death experience really brought me on a fabulous journey. It brought me on a journey into gleaning data and knowledge from going back to Plato and Aristotle and Socrates. And my favorite was Dr. Emanuel Swedenborg, who in the 1700s, he started to converse with angels and guides and all of these amazing people that had died. But he was shown the afterlife. He was brought into the different dimensions and the different spheres within the afterlife, because we don't all go to the same level. We all gravitate towards the level of our awareness that we have in this life. So whatever level of awareness spiritually and consciously we have in this life, that's the level we will graduate to. But we have the opportunity under the law of progress to progress along our soul path while we're there. So I suppose for me, I've had an immense, beautiful journey. I've met and studied under wonderful people like Deepak Chopra. I've studied with the wonderful Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote on reincarnation. And I met beautiful Wayne Dyer, So my journey has been very, shall I say, fruitful. But I have to say then, Jeff, that while after my near-death experience, it took me a year to start my healing journey. But in that year, within 3 months of my near-death experience, my life had took a nosedive for the worst. Even though I had had this beautiful, phenomenal, incredible, spiritual, heavenly experience, my life, my physical life hadn't changed. So I just needed to end it for once and for all. I just needed to exit this life. So at about 2:00 in the morning, I decided I was going to end my life. And I just wanted to get rid of the pain. I could no longer. And bless my ex-husband, who has been my greatest teacher here on Mother Earth, my absolute greatest teacher. Because through him, I later discovered the power of love, the power of forgiveness. So, but he had bought a new car 2 or 3 days previous. And he dangled the keys in front of me and he said, "You'll never put your backside in that new car." And I went, By the time I'm finished, it was a revengeful suicide. Seriously, it wasn't. I was said, "Well, by God, by the time I'm finished with this car tonight, you won't sit in it either." So it was an act of revenge, which is not good now spiritually. When I've been told by my guides the consequences of a revengeful death. But so there was a Docklands in our city, and they had no protective barriers. So my idea was it has to be easy. If I go around the bend under the bridge, put my foot in the accelerator, close my eyes, and just put my foot in and just close my eyes and go straight in, and my pain is over. But just as I was about to go out my front door, my father's face and his hand, this same hand that I had seen 3 or 4 months previous in my near-death experience, that's the hand. And he said, "Stop. Molly." He had a pet name for all of his kids, and his name for me was Molly. So he says, "Molly Akujin," and Akujin is an Irish word for darling or dearie or sweetie. "Keep your powder dry." So, Jeff, me keeping my powder dry means at least 3 hours later, I'm sitting in the sitting room on the couch, and I am shaking. I am blue with cold. My teeth are nattering. My hands are shaking. And I'm looking at a clock on the mantelpiece, and it's about 5:10. 5:10. So I have no recollection of what happened from 2:00 to 5:10. I have no recall of it. I have had a lot of past life regression to try and recall it, but I've since been told by my spirit guides that they were having me in this holding space, which was to repair my soul trauma. So that was the repairing my soul trauma. But so the next day, Jeff, I went to a solicitor, and the rest is history. So my complete journey of healing only began then when I took my own power back. So having the near-death experience with the hand peering out through this beautiful light, and then the same hand appearing to me when I was going to end it, I know now it was my father, that it wasn't my time, if that makes sense.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And I first want to take you back to your NDE. When you first exited your body, did you realize that you were dead, or what was going on in your mind at that time?
I had no idea that I was dead, because I was still looking down at myself. But the feeling of being free and light up above my body was just incredible. It was like, wow, I don't feel pain anymore. I don't feel sad anymore. I don't feel, I felt as if I was in love with myself again. For the first time ever, I was in love with me. I loved me. because I had fallen out of love with myself for many years because of the traumas that I was going through on this earth plane. And I found it very hard to love myself because I felt, well, if my husband at that time can't love me, well, then sure, I'm unlovable. So feeling this love, it was so liberating. It was so pure. It was like I had fallen back in love with me, with Mariel, with the person that I am, and that I'm a good person. And to see these people working on me and all the panic that was going on, but it didn't faze me. I knew I was in this lovely space and I wanted to stay there. I really wanted to stay there. I didn't want to leave.
Was it the type of love that you'd been yearning for all your life?
No, Jeff, because I was reared in a family where there was so much love and there was music and there was, as they say in Irish, rira agus rúlia búlia. There was music in our house. My father, even though he was an engineer, but he used to play the accordion and the mouth organ, and the tin whistle was always in his breast pocket. So we were always so we were reared with such music. And it was, so the love was always there. He used to call my mother Cinderella, and he had a pet name, as I said earlier, for all of us. And he loved his daughters. Not saying he didn't love his sons, his three sons, but he loved his daughters, and in a very gentleman way. My father was 6'4", and he was just a beautiful, gentle soul. And I suppose for me, Jeff, knowing love, I was reared. I was educated by nuns. So they did it. Now, no disrespect to the nuns and the religious orders for the great work they have done around the world in education and in medicine and in, orphanages and things like that. But the nuns that I was educated by, any little bit of self-confidence or self-worth that I had, it was knocked out of me, And even when they'd be talking in our religious class about God being punishing and God was you were going to burn in hell if you told a lie. So all of these kind of condemnations of God that was, to me, was loving. And I'd contradict and I'd say, no, sister, I don't agree with you there. And they say, what do you mean? And I say, no, God is not punishing. The one I know is not punishing. So I would end up, Jeff, behind the blackboard with a dunce's hat in my head for the rest of the day. Now, I was quite happy there. I had my own little thing going on behind the blackboard. So I felt that the confidence and the self-worth and self-esteem was always kind of being knocked, not by my family, but by my educators. So when I came to, say, 12 and 13, when I was going into a higher school, I lacked the confidence in knowing that I was able to speak in public in the debating teams. I would always second guess myself when it would come to exams. I knew I would know the stuff, but I would never have the say, well, I'm absolutely amazing. I can do this, So, and then at 15 and 16, I had an amazing experience, my first spiritual experience with Mother Mary, who has continued to be my guide ever since. And Mother Mary, we had what they call, it may not know, kind of like an old monastery at the side of our school. And every morning of my life, because I was terrified of one teacher, and I used to pray that she wouldn't touch me or beat us. We got an awful hard time going to school. So one of these mornings I was in the grotto. It was like built underground with all these beautiful rocks, and there was a beautiful statuette of Mother Mary, and there was always a place you could light your candles, make your request or your petition or your intention for the day. And it was just one of those mornings, and I just looked up, and the cement statue in front of it was the real Mother Mary. And I will never forget the vision. I will never forget her face. I will never forget the way she smiled, and it went from left to right, and she smiled, and I ran out of the place, left my school bag, my lunch bag, everything after me. And I asked one of the guys that was coming into the church, I said, would you ever go in and get me my school bag and my lunch? And when he came out, I said, did you see anything? Is there anything going on in there? No. He says, not a thing. Right? So I never told anybody, Jeff, about that for over 20 years for fear they would have said I was losing it. And as a consequence, then, I always had this. My grandmother was very psychic, Jeff. My grandmother was very psychic. My uncle, which is unheard of now, was a seventh son of a seventh son. So he came in with huge psychic abilities. My brother was extremely psychic, and he was my youngest brother. And he was able to tell me 3 weeks before he died that something was going to happen that was going to change the dynamics of our family. So he was so psychic that my brothers used to call him Mystic Meg. They wouldn't even go for a drink with him because he'd always pick up on somebody's energy, or he'd have a message that he'd have to deliver. So it didn't surprise me that I came in with, I was the only one that was in tune with my psychic gifts. And they never bothered me. They were there. I used to see light. I used to communicate with angels. And then when I had the experience with Mother Mary, I felt it was a great blessing. And then I said, maybe I'm supposed to become a nun. So I researched becoming a nursing sister in Glasgow, in Scotland. And I did a special novena to Mother Mary for 30 days to guide me. And by the time I had the 30-day prayer done, it was, no, you're not to be a nun. That's it. End of story. So I went on then and I studied science and became a serologist. And I put everything of my psychic abilities to one side, even though I was always very much involved in reading, about the afterlife and about the journey of the soul and lessons that we need to master in this lifetime, through people. And it was only then when I had my near-death experience that it opened up a profound arena for me to go on a different path completely. I completely did a 360-degree turn, completely. And I left a very secure job, one that had bonuses twice a year, company car, phone, you name it. I walked away from it all after my brother dying, and I did not know where I was going to start making a crust to keep the roof over my head. And I was just told by my guides that I needed to trust that they would open the pathways and the doorways for me, but I needed to trust, So that was a big thing for me, Jeff, to trust that all of this would open up a whole new vista. So I suppose from there on, then I started doing really delving into crystal healing, IET, which is integrative energy therapy. I became a master teacher of that as well. Reiki, shamanism, everything. I just felt I needed to know about everything so that I could form a balanced opinion. Left brain, right brain, or is it all in my mind? So it was very important to me that I was able to discern for me, because I was a skeptic. Even though I had my spiritual experiences happening all the time, I needed to be able to evaluate what was real and what was not. And is there an afterlife? Is there a huge richness out there beyond the five senses? And yes, I can categorically say now, there is so much we have yet as human beings to understand. So much more beyond the five senses.
It sounds like when you say guide, you're saying guides as in plural. But I'm a little confused. Is Mother Mary your guide, or do you have different guides?
I have many different guides. One, Mother Mary would be my ascended master that came in when I was 15, but only became activated and anchored within me when I started healing, when I started my healing modalities, like Reiki and like IET, right? She, it's not me when I'm doing the healing. When I'm channeling healing, it's her energy that's working through me, not mine. It's an energy beyond me. It's a universal healing. My other guides, I have two other incredible guides, and one of them is a Dama. And he's one of the guides that came in from the ancient civilization of Atlantis and Lemuria, when those two lost continents. And when I was in Mount Shasta, I think it was about 2006, Master Adama came in during meditation. I was in this beautiful sacred place in Mount Shasta, and I went there with the intention of experiencing the portal of Archangel Gabriel, because one of his ascension chambers is there in Mount Shasta, and had this incredible experience where Adama, my spirit guide, said that he would be working with me in the not too distant future. Now, I wasn't sure whether I heard this right, but the lady that was doing the reading the following day, she had a tape recorder running, and she heard the exact same thing that I heard, that Adama was presenting himself to me, and very soon he'd be working through me. So he has remained an incredible ambassador to my spiritual path. And I have another, she's an archangel. She's called Gallianiel. I know it's a big mouthful. And she has come in the last 5 years. And she guides me on the path of, if I have questions about, say, like the afterlife, if I have questions about somebody that may have ended their life through suicide, if I have questions about any particular thing, I ask her and I get the information for whoever I'm giving the information to. It's never information for myself. The information that was gleaned for the book, for Whereafter, came from my guides and has come from research over 30 plus years. So I have different guides, but our guides come in at different stages according to, as we grow and evolve, Jeff, on our life path. And as we become more spiritually awakened, rather than more materialistically awakened, we are given guides to show us. It's like after my near-death experience, I started to see angels. I started to learn about spirit guides. And one of the other guides that has come in is Saint Germain of the Violet Flame. And he has always been working with me. And he was another one that came in after I was in Mount Shasta in California. So I have many guides and different ones. I'm expecting a new one to come in now by the end of next year. I've been told a new one is coming. I don't know who it is, because my path, my soul will have opened up to more opportunities for my soul learning.
All right. Your book is called Whereafter. Where do our loved ones go after they die? Asking a question. So let me turn the question to you. Where do they go after they die?
I love it, Jeff. I love it. Well, where do and you see, Jeff, this is the whole thing. The fact that I work with people, so many people, and ran so many courses and classes, and teaching people how to connect with their loved ones. The fear of death is paralyzing so many people, and it's the fear of the unknown. And what we don't realize, as we are souls, we are spirit beings occupying a human body. We're only coming on earth to occupy a vehicle. It's like going into your garage and buying a car. The car is not you, but you are, say, the driver. You're going to be driving this car around. So when we come on earth as a soul, the soul occupies this human vessel. The human body is the vessel that carries us around until its term of office is complete. So when life, be it a season, a reason, or a lifetime, be it short or brief, no one ever exits without it being their time. And I know that's very hard also for somebody that may have lost a child, or for somebody who may have miscarried, or for someone who may have lost somebody very young. Nobody leaves this world before their time. We have already signed our sacred contract before we come on earth. We have sat around our council of guides and spirit beings, and they have agreed with us. We have not signed in anything to that contract that we didn't understand. Maybe it's incomplete business from a previous lifetime. Maybe it's to learn forgiveness. Maybe it's to learn how to love more. Maybe it's to learn how to be, of service rather than taking everything from a previous lifetime that we may have done. So when we leave this life, it's always the right time. The soul chooses its timing, soul chooses its going. And so when we cross over, what actually happens, I've been very blessed, Jeff, to sit at the bedside of many people, young and old, who are about to make that transition to the other side. I'm called in as a spirit midwife, and that means it's like I help recoil the chakra system. The chakras are the meridians that are like the engine centers of our body. And through a very sacred and beautiful, blessed process, I recoil the chakras. Well, I'm guided how to do it all the time. No two are the exact same. And when the person is ready, have you heard of the silver cord?
Yes.
Right? So some people don't realize that we have a lifeline while we're here on earth. We have a lifeline called the silver cord. This silver cord is like the umbilical cord that's within the mother's womb that nourishes the baby for the 9 months while it's there in vitro, while it's being fed and nourished and growing. So when baby is born, the umbilical cord is cut. Mother is separate from baby and baby is separate from mother. Their life becomes independent. So the silver cord, when we are about to make that transition, the silver cord, it can extend, it's limitless. That's why when we have a near-death experience, the silver cord is never cut. It's never disengaged. And that's why when we have out-of-body experiences, the silver cord brings us out into the astral planes while we're having out-of-body experiences. And it keeps us connected to the physical plane, but it also keeps us connected to the heavenly plane. So when we're about to transition, as I call it, or when we're about to leave this world, the silver cord disengages, it stretches, it gets very, very thin, and there is a point where it snaps. And that's the point of no return. That's where you are truly, truly physically, in the main sense of the word, dead. Whereas when we're having the near-death experience, the cord snaps us back into the physical body. So that's the difference between the near-death experience and the actual, when the point of no return comes with the silver cord, it snaps and the person transitions to the other side. So when they're going to the other side, then when you're really, really on the other side, there we have what is called, and you mentioned it earlier, Jeff, the life review. And the life review is like a movie of our lives. Our words, it's hard to believe it, but I've been shown this as well by my guides. All our words, all our actions, everything we have ever done, good and bad, is going to be weighed up. It's like a ledger, the balance sheet of our lives. Where did we show love? Where did we show kindness? Where were we dreadful? Where we bullied people? Where we intimidated people? Where we were not nice? So, and the funny part about it, from what people don't understand, it's not a God that judges you on your behavior, your actions. You're shown your life review, and it's you yourself that judges you, not a God, not a spirit guide, not a presence. It's you. And then you're shown, okay, how did I accumulate such karma? And karma is another thing. Karma is, as I always say, karma is a bitch. It comes back and it bites you on the ass. Because what we give out in life, we do reap it tenfold. So it's always, and that's the message that comes in very, very strong from the other side. It's the amount of love we show. It's nothing got to do with how many holidays we have a year. Nothing got to do with the car we have in our driveway. It's nothing got to do with our bank balance. Absolutely none of that matters. When we cross over to the other side and we're shown our life review, it's how we made somebody else feel good in life, or the opposite, how we didn't make them feel good and what we could have done. So when we have this life review, that's an awful lot of the time. A lot of people with near-death experiences, they see Oh my God, I was horrible there. I was so cruel. I wasn't nice. I intimidated. I bullied. Money was my God. And then with the near-death experience, they are given the choice to come back, or else they're told it's not your time. So, but the life review then for somebody that has actually made the transition to the other side and the silver cord disengaged, they are showing the opportunities then. They are given opportunities. There are schoolings on the inner planes. There are halls of learning. There is temples of healing. There's temples of sound. All of those beautiful places are made available to the soul that is about to transition. Now, in saying that, I'm very reminded to say to you, Jeff, that sometimes when a person leaves the body and it is like it's unexpected, say like a car accident, say like a drowning, say like a tsunami, say like bless the 9/11 that's just after having the 20th anniversary, and bless all those souls who agreed to be part of that collective consciousness and collective healing for the earth, because every single human sentient being has learned something from that 9/11, and bless all those that are suffering the aftermath still. But when somebody leaves the body very quickly like that, the soul is catapulted out of the body so that it doesn't feel trauma. I had a lady that came, her husband was he worked in the fire department, and he got trapped in a fire, and his friends could not get to him, and there was a big gas explosion, and she all that ever bothered her for months and months was he being burnt? Was he being burnt alive? Was he, did he feel so much pain? So we did a beautiful meditation together where I was guided to bring her to her husband in the spirit world. And he told her that when the fire started and the explosion happened, that he felt he left his body, and he felt his soul like a light left his body, like a star, he said, leaving his body, and that he was there. He looked back and he saw his body burning, but he didn't feel it. So it is very reassuring for some of us that have lost loved ones tragically to know that the soul is catapulted. It's taken from the body at the point of impact, so that the physical body doesn't feel the pain or the trauma of what's about to happen, which is reassuring.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, because from what I can remember, maybe every one of my NDE guests that had a traumatic way of almost dying, usually they didn't experience it. They popped out of their body just before it happened, like being hit by a car or something like that.
Yeah, and that's reassurance has also come from my guides, and it has come from clients of mine whose son or whose husband or whose brother or has transitioned tragically. They didn't feel anything through car accident or firing or burning, so that gives comfort as well to the family that are grieving, or to those that have lost a loved one in such circumstances.
Why do you think we come here in the first place?
Do you know, Jeff, I've asked my guides that many times, and I've asked myself, how many more times do I have to come around here to get it right? It's, from what I understand from the spirit world, we come here time and time again until we reach that state of almost God perfection, where our souls have mastered all the lessons, where we are a non-judgmental presence in our dealings with others. There is no consequences to actions that we have done, because everything we do, we're doing it from a place of grace, from a place of virtue, from a place of unconditional love. But sadly, a lot of us, we hold on to anger, we hold on to grudges, we want to get even with somebody, we want to punish people because they did this, and he did this and she did that. So we have this kind of mentality of wanting to punish, and you have to pay. You must pay. So with that type of an unawakened conscious, it's not going to serve us well, because when we cross over to the other side, we are shown how we can do better. So that's why when we have enough tools behind us in the spirit world, then we agree, that predominantly we agree to come back to right the wrongs. Like for me in this lifetime, it was very important for me that I come back to learn the power of forgiveness and the power of beginning to love myself. Because forgiveness was one of the huge lessons I needed to learn in this lifetime. By being able not alone to forgive my ex-husband, but to be able to forgive myself. And now I find it, when some things go wrong with people, as they do, because we're a part of the human frailty, when things go wrong, I don't hold on to grudges. I'm able to say, bless you in love and light. That's your stuff, not mine. And I'll bless them. I might even light a candle for them and let it go. But it's when we hold on to stuff, that's the stuff that festers. And that's not serving our soul. That's not going to nourish our soul to grow more spiritually towards a greater God perfection. So that's why I feel we come round again. It's because we haven't mastered the lesson. And it could be as simple, possibly, Jeff, as being a pauper in our last life and being rich in this life and being able to manage it, but do good with that richness.
Can you explain to us what the soul journey is, and soul fragmentation and soul loss?
The soul has been much topic for debate, Jeff, going back thousands and thousands of years. The soul has been discussed by Aristotle, by Plato, by you name it, many of the wise people. And the common denominator, what I've discovered between Plato, Aristotle, and Swedenborg and Descartes, even in more recent times, that they all agreed, every single one of them agreed, that the soul was that most divine part of us, of the human psychic, and that the soul was a consciousness. And many of the doctors, going back to Dr. Pim van Lommel, who is the Dutch cardiologist, he has done huge research because of his patients having near-death experiences. And he believes and has endorsed it and has written many papers on it, that the soul survives beyond the brain and beyond the physical body, that it is a consciousness. The soul is that part of us that never dies. That's why we are immortal. We are eternal beings. That's where that phrase comes in. And the soul the soul is our driving machine. The soul is, and then people say, where is the soul in the body? Where is the soul? The soul is everywhere and it's nowhere. That's what my guides have told me. It's everywhere and it's nowhere. It drives the mind and our emotions. It drives our heart towards love and unconditional love. It drives the body to do good things, but also bad things. So the soul is everywhere and nowhere. That's how it has been described. But without the soul, we are empty vessels. And that's why when we transition to the other side, it's our soul that leaves the body. It's not us. It's not this big human part of us. The bones is returned to the earth or returned into the fire, wherever the choice is. But the soul, when it returns to that place of God's light, the soul then gets to choose. Does it return? Does it reincarnate again with another purpose, with another agenda? So the soul it's very multifaceted, very complex, but yet very simple when you understand that it is that a huge part of us that is eternal and it never dies.
Can you give us some examples of heavenly signs that our deceased loved ones are trying to contact us?
Our loved ones are always, when they get to the other side, Jeff, they are very anxious to let us know they've arrived okay. And sometimes they will say they loved a certain piece of music And that piece of music could all of a sudden start playing. They might say they loved, say, whatever, like Amazing Grace, and say that the song Amazing Grace appears across the airways for no apparent reason. The feather, some people associate with a sign. I often find it's predominantly music. It's a book that may fall off a shelf for no apparent reason. Sometimes they could visit us during dreams when we're asleep at night. It's much easier for the soul to levitate down and to meet the physical body because of the person that they're trying to contact. Because when we are in that dream or sleep state, the ego is put to rest, because the ego blocks a lot of our communication with the spirit world. The ego has its own little agenda going on. So it is so important that if we have had a visit from a loved one, it's so important to understand that this loved one is trying to get through to us. And as I said, it can be music. It can even be a smell, a scent of an aftershave that they wore. It can be a perfume that they wore. It can be a butterfly. It can be a bird. And, there are many signs, but also if the person that's grieving is too traumatized, that being too traumatized means that the soul on the spirit world cannot get through, because the heart is too hardened. They can't get through. And sorry, Jeff, you asked me there a moment ago and I didn't answer about soul fragmentation. Mm-hmm. What actually can happen with soul fragmentation if you have had a trauma. I've had many clients that they've come to me and I can see their soul is fragmented, and it can always be traced back to a trauma, maybe a childhood trauma, maybe an event. Even sometimes surgery can fragment the soul if it's very extensive surgery. So I think and I don't want to alarm anyone, but for anyone that's listening that's ever going to have surgery or a day procedure, always send your angels and your guides before you to clear the space. Always place an armor of protection around you so that your body is held safe and sacred. And also place it on the surgeons and all the people in attending to you on that day, so that everything is held safe and clean. Because sometimes the soul can fragment if there is too much going on with incisions on the body. And sometimes it is so important just to be there beforehand to just check it out, check the place out. You don't have to do it physically, but you can do it mentally. Be in the operating theatre, be in the pre-op room, be in the post-op. Just send this light, because it does help. So the soul fragmentation can happen through different things, like, as I said, through trauma, abuse, or otherwise. It can also happen through if you have over abuse of alcohol or drugs, even people that are, believe it or not, that can cause a soul intrusion or a soul fragmentation. There are so many different aspects to it, and I suppose too numerous to go into each of them in detail this evening.
Your NDE happened about 30 years ago, correct?
Oh,
was it?
Yes.
Yes.
1992, yes.
All right. Sorry to drop that.
Really telling my age now.
Sorry to drop the age bomb on you there, but
yeah, great.
How have you changed now over those years?
Jeff, it's I suppose it's not one particular change. For a long, long time, while I wrote down my near-death experience, I never shared it. I wrote down exactly what had happened and what I had vivid recall of. I suppose, and especially then months later when I tried to end my life and being given the gift of life again, I realized that there had to be a purpose, a reason. Here I am again, that I was saved again by this hand that came out and said, stop, keep your powder dry. So that's when I changed my direction in my career. I just realized, and especially after my brother dying, I just felt I can't do this. I can't do this work anymore. It wasn't sustaining me. It wasn't filling me. So my thirst for all things spiritual started to really, really grow within me. And I mushroomed, I blossomed into, somebody that was always, while I was great for debating and at school, I began to, all the healing modalities that I was studying, I began to realize I know this stuff. I'm good at this. This just didn't happen in this lifetime. It was like I had an innate knowing. I know this stuff. But I became very humble I didn't have to prove anything to anybody anymore. Like when I was in my academic head, it was like I was always trying to prove myself. If I did one degree, I had to do another. Then I did a master's degree, and I did, I was always competing with myself. I was never happy with myself. So since my near-death experience, I've become very contented in a God presence that I don't have to prove anything anymore. I know God is in me, guiding me. I have guides that are there. The life is very precious. Yes, life, and it's very, very tough as well. I have very rocky days where I'm really tested, and I shout out and I say, how much more do you want to put me through? Okay, I just say to God, yeah, how much more? And it's not that I have an easy ride, far from it, because I get very challenged with life and with people in my life, and I bless them. And it is like, I suppose I have allowed my gifts to come through now, and I'm not ashamed of them. I used to hide my gifts. They were hidden in the healing room. They would be hidden except when I'd be running classes and I'd get all this information for somebody that would be sitting in my audience, and where I would be kind of tipping them on the shoulder, come to me afterwards, we'll have a little chat. Whereas now it's like, I suppose Whereafter has forced me, for want of a better word, to come out of the darkness and into the light of my own soul self. And it has taken many years, but I've been told I'm a very humble servant, and my purpose is a God purpose now. I have no idea where it's going, Jeff, but it's like in the beginning when I left work, I had to trust. Now I have to trust this process as well. It's another stepping stone to my soul path. And I'm very grateful for it as well.
Do you think it's important for someone to share their NDE early and not wait?
Well, I suppose mine happened so long ago, and it's only now I'm talking about it, over 30 years. I wasn't ready, Jeff, and I felt it was something very sacred and very private for me. And it was an experience that I was brought on by this God presence. And I felt it was too precious to share. But as I said, while I wrote it down vividly, what I vividly remembered, I was afraid to say it for fear of being ridiculed. I was afraid to open up and say, oh yeah, sure, I had one of those. I remember this and this. But now I think it's all about divine timing. And I think this divine time has finally come upon me now to share it without feeling ashamed.
So you don't think that now, after you have shared, you should have shared a lot earlier?
No, it actually feels right. It actually feels right. And I'm a great one in believing in all things happen in divine time. And it is like it's when I hand it over to the greater power, because I realized a long time ago, Jeff, I don't have power or control over nothing. I think I have. I thought I had power over everything. I thought I could control everything, even to putting the sheets on the bed the way they're supposed to go. It doesn't make a bit of difference as long as they're put on the bed or not. I had that sense. I used to control everything. And then having the analytical mind, first of all, prevailing and dominating, it was like I felt, and I had to forward plan. I had to do everything in advance, especially because I worked in a multinational corporate world. And I had a huge role and responsibility. So planning was of the utmost. Now here I am all these years later, and I'm being told time and time again, surrender, trust in the divine, and everything happens. So I'm learning. I'm still learning, Jeff. I mean, I don't know, will I ever get it totally right? But I'm learning to trust more. And I know when things don't happen, sometimes I pray for, people think, oh God, you must be awful religious. I'm not religious. I have a huge faith. And I'd like to think I'm evolving more spiritually every day. But when I pray for things to happen, or for things that I would obviously really, really need, and they don't happen, I realize when they don't happen, there is a greater plan. There is a bigger plan unfolding. And it's like, I could be praying for a little Ford Fiesta, a little car. Now I do need a car. My other car has gone to car heaven, a little Ford Fiesta. But if I'm praying for a Ford Fiesta and so maybe God has a bigger plan. Maybe he wants me to have a BMW. So I'm limiting what God wants to deliver because I'm just asking for a Ford Fiesta. No disrespect to Ford Fiestas.
Mariel, I've got to switch gears on you because I'm running out of time. So again, I want to let people know your book is called Whereafter. Where do our loved ones go after they die? Where can you find your book? My book can be got on John Hunt Publishing's 6th book, all the Amazon sites globally. And my website is marielfordeclarke.com, and all the information is there as well. All right. After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask questions. Are you open to that? And if so, how can they find you? Absolutely. And I'm humbled. As I said, I feel I am a divine servant of God, and I have a God purpose now, and it's all happening through my book Whereafter. And my website, my marielfordeclarke.com, will lead you onto the other links, and my email addresses and my Twitter and all of that. And I'm always very happy to answer questions for anybody that might feel they have a question that wants answering. And I will do my best to honor it. So you've got books, you've got classes. Do you have anything else going on that you want us to know about? Well, I've lately become an ordained interfaith minister. So, it's a great blessing for doing weddings and funerals. And, people are looking more towards a more holistic way of laying their loved ones to rest. So that's just another string to my bow at this stage. But I haven't had much time. I have done a few services, doing a lot of healing ceremonies as well. It's amazing the amount of healing that can come from a simple ceremony, especially now, Jeff, because, so many during the last 18 months have lost loved ones, and there wasn't a time to say goodbye. So I've been guided to do little ceremonies to bring families together and say what they needed to say, what they didn't get the opportunity to say, and do it in a sacred space so that their loved ones can receive it. And it's very precious and very sacred. But anybody can do that. It doesn't have to be me. Anybody can light a beautiful candle in their own home, set up a sacred space, invite their family and friends. They can read lovely little prayers. They can do a little eulogy and say all the things that they wanted to say to their loved ones. Because bear in mind, this is important for people to understand. What you have in your heart, your loved one hears it in the spirit world completely. All right. Well, before we finish up, do you have one last positive message that you can share with everyone? Okay. I've talked a lot about love being the energy, and I suppose I mention Einstein because I studied him a lot. But Einstein said instead of E equals mc squared. And if we use the power of love multiplied by the speed of light squared, we would end up with the most powerful energy on the planet, which is love. It is limitless. And it is about love. And to me, love is what we are going to be
evaluated on when we cross over. And I wish everybody love and peace in their hearts, in their minds, and in their souls.
Thank you for that message, Mariel, and thank you so much for being my guest. I really appreciate you, and I wish you the best.
It's been an absolute honor and privilege. Bless you and all that are listening. God bless.
Thank you, and God bless you, and have a great day over there. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.